Everybody, good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ben Wilder, Director of the Desert Laboratory here on Tumamoc Hill. Thanks a lot for joining this evening. And I'm honored, as always, to be talking to you here from Chimamagiduag, Tumamoc Hill, Hill of the Horned Lizard, which is on O'odham lands, as well as Paskoyaki and many other native nations descend from the Huhukam and the peoples before them. And I think that that has remarkable meaning at all times, but is directly at the core of the lecture series we're talking about this whole fall, and especially tonight, in terms of the life-giving water that's in the Santa Cruz River and that has allowed people to be here for thousands of years. And really we're focusing on what is the future of that. So for those of you that have participated in maybe every lecture in this series thus far, thank you so much. I think I can speak for you. I can certainly speak for myself that I've learned a lot, and it has been really helpful to kind of put these different pieces together in the lenses of how we can view the river. So I just want to thank all the speakers that have shared their time and their knowledge with us thus far, and the partners that have made this lecture series possible. So those of you that are listening that are friends of Tumamoc, thank you so much. Your contributions make this programming possible, as well as many of the other ways that we try to steward this really, really important core part of our community. So thank you. We also are really privileged to be working with the San Javier WAC district, and Chairman Nunez is with us this evening, as well as the San Javier Co-op Farm, the Sonoran Institute, which Claire Zugmeyer is with us tonight, Pima County Flood Control, represented tonight by Evan Canfield, and then City of Tucson Water, which we had last night on with Maya Tuachea and Dick Thompson. So I guess with kind of to help get ourselves in the mindset for this evening, we've really been building. And if you've missed previous lectures in the series, there you saw on that slide just before, they're all online. And so I encourage you to, look at them as your interest draws you there, because they really do kind of fit together. And we're building this kind of understanding of how did the river come to be what it is today, both from a very long historical perspective, but also kind of understanding the real harm that has been done to it in the last 100 years. And then some of the real encouraging, innovative restoration efforts that are happening to today. And that was really the focus of last night. And so where we're picking it up and gonna end with the series tonight is what's tomorrow? What is the future of this river, the lifeblood of Tucson, of Tucson, and what is our part in it? And what are the ways that we can continue to envision and create a vibrant future for the core of our city? So I guess without further ado, we'll get into the program tonight. So the way it's gonna work, just kind of as you've joined us before, that we're gonna have three kind of relatively short presentations. And then I'll be moderating a panel discussion on the back end. If you have questions, please put them in the question, in the chat, in the kind of the question and answer box there that you'll see on your Zoom screen. And then I'll be able to fold those in during the panel discussion towards the end. So first gonna be speaking is Austin Nunez. Austin Nunez is chairman of the San Javier district, one of the 11 political districts of the O'odham Nation. He's currently serving his 9th four-year term, having continuously served since 1987. That's pretty much my entire life. In his job as chairman, he presides over district council and community meetings, and is CEO for the district's governmental operations. He's president of the San Javier Development Authority Board, and is also board president for the Indian Land Working Group, a national organization dedicated to the restoration and recovery of the native land base. He's held this post since 2001. He has 3 adult children, and 6 wonderful grandchildren. Chairman Nunez, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome, and please feel free to unmute yourself and turn your video on. All right, perfect.
All right, thank you very much, Ben. Good evening to all of you. It's my honor and privilege to be with all of you here this evening time. Regarding the most sacred of elements that Creator has given us, our water. And I'm very grateful to all the entities that have come together to join and work towards revitalizing not only the Santa Cruz, but other river areas here in the Tucson area. And we as Whanautum of the Santa Cruz District are very honored to continue to have this area here to be able to call it home. And the original name of the our community is Walk, and Walk is referring to the river that flowed in the river and went into the ground. In all of them, Walk means to go into or to enter. And then the river flowed underground up to present day Tucson. And so because of the water, our forefathers, the Hukam, and all who came afterwards settled in this area and began to grow crops. And we're grateful that we can still grow those crops, beans, corn, squash, and be able to subsist in this desert environment. And if it weren't for the water, I don't believe that there would have been any settlements in this whole area from where the head flow of the Santa Cruz River is to present-day Tucson. So we have, you know, as Alton people, we have seen a lot of changes. We have experienced in the beginning the lushness of the area when the climate was much different. It was wetter, and the Santa Cruz, which we call Hickthon today, but formerly our elders have informed us that it was called Ariak, which means small river or baby river, and it is small in comparison to the Gila River and Salt River. So we were able to enjoy all the wildlife that were associated with the water. We were able to use the mesquite, the cottonwood, and all the plant life for shelter and for medicinal purposes. And years ago, there was wild turkeys in the area, and so we had used some of their feathers for ceremonial purposes. And then, of course, there were eagles are more abundant back then, and so we use the eagle feathers as well for ceremonies. And we roamed through this whole area, more than the 72,000 acres that we currently have here for the Santa Cruz District, and certainly more than the 3 million acres that we have in total as Whanautum Nation. And our ancestral lands extended all the way down to present-day Gulf of California, Gachem, and then we gathered salt there, and we revered the salt and used it in a sacred manner for our ceremonies and for ourselves. And because we had the water here, I believe, at least in my recollection, that we didn't have the rain ceremonies that we do today, only because we had the water source. I know our relatives out west who didn't have an annual flow of water had the rain ceremony and utilized the saguaro fruit to be able to make a ceremonial wine to have as part of the rain ceremony. But today we've incorporated that into our community as one of the ceremonies. So having the water available as it was, we diverted it to our farm fields, and this whole region, this area where we're at, has some of the best soils in the county, if not the state. And so that really helped to be able to allow us to grow the crops that we did. And we then continued to subsist here, even with the influx of the newcomers. When the Spaniards came, of course, they brought Catholicism with them, and Father Kino had brought implements to help us with our farming, metal implements, whereas before we're using wooden implements to be able to farm with. And then, of course, he brought wheat, which is a winter crop, and so we had grown that as well. And I do remember as a young boy, about 5 or 6 years old, that they were thrashing wheat in the back of our yard, and that was just something that I'd only seen then, and then I hadn't seen it since. But with the influx of the newcomers to this area and the building of groundwater wells, of course, the groundwater table then began to be lowered, and eventually the flow in the Santa Cruz went away. And mixed with that were the annual storms that came through, and with the ground being drier, it then began to incise the earth where the river flowed, and the Santa Cruz began to change. And with the change, it destroyed some of the mesquite bosque that was thriving there, the cottonwood, and with less vegetation, then there was less wildlife. And then eventually it began to incise it so much that it was just like a really small canyon. And that's why we had referred to it in the last several years, probably since the 50s, as Hickthing. And all of them that word is referred to being cut. And so it was cutting the earth. So that's my understanding of why we, so, and then the flows only came during the storm, with the storms. And so we then had the Bureau of Indian Affairs, they dug as wells, groundwater wells as well, to help with our farming. So that helped. But when more population began to come and live in the area, with more usage of the groundwater, then the groundwater table went even further lower. And I believe that we had to dig wells to maybe about 200 feet. And so it became costly to rebuild the wells that we had. And so we began to just let the farms lay fallow because we didn't have the water. And it was at that point that we began to look at our options as a community to be able to make sure that we had sufficient water for today and for the future. And so we filed the 1975 lawsuit against the United States to restore our water rights. And after 23 years, we ended up with the Southern Arizona Water Rights Settlement Act to provide water to our community. And today we receive 50,000 acre feet of Central Arizona project water, and we use that for farming primarily, and we use it for part of our riparian restoration projects, and then also to recharge the rest. And so we've been managing the water to the best of our abilities for today and for the future. And in being able to receive the Central Arizona project water, we've been able to again green up our fields, and we're growing our traditional crops as well as commercial crops, and we were able to restore a portion of the river to what it may have looked like years ago. Cottonwood trees are thriving in the area, and other trees, including mesquite, and we wish, and well, that actually was a dream and a hope of our elders back when we were informed that we will get water to our community again. One of their visions was for the river to flow again. And looking at that, after the elders stated that to us, we realized that it would take a lot of time, a lot of funding to be able to have the river flow like it used to. So that is still a hope and a dream from myself and from the community, that somehow, some way, that we would have the river flow again. And I know that there are methods to do that, but again, it takes a lot of time and commitment and financial resources. Part of it has to do with building gabions, check dams, and I remember too, as a teenager, that there had been a dam built in the Santa Cruz, just south of Martinez Hill, and the floodwaters just broke it apart, and it's no more. So there was good intentions back then, and those good intentions can still move forward and be able to benefit all of us. And we need to, as a community, continue to farm to be able to provide food for ourselves, and then for our neighbors who do come and purchase the products that we have at the Santa Cruz Cooperative Farm. And we know that we will continue to do that as long as we have a good water source. So it's vitally important, all the work that all of you have done, the entities that are involved in looking at the Santa Cruz Valley watershed, and have the same views that we have as a community here. And I am, again, very grateful to our forefathers, our ancestors, for having the thought and prayer for us to have a better life today. And we continue to do that for our children and grandchildren, those yet to come. So, excuse me. So I appreciate being able to express my thoughts and my vision of my community as we move forward. So that's all I'd like to say at this point, and I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you, Ben. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chairman. I have a lot of follow-up questions, but I'll wait till we get to the panel. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
All right, next we have joining us is Evan Canfield. Evan is the Watershed Studies Division Manager at the Pima County Regional Flood Control District. He leads the Flood Control District's Santa Cruz River Management Plan effort. For the past 7 years, he has led the Living River effort for the Flood Control District in partnership with Sonoran Institute. He earned a PhD in agricultural engineering from the University of Arizona and an MS in geology from the University of Wisconsin. And Evan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We heard from your compatriots last night, Dick and Maya on the Tucson water side. They left all the hard questions for you tonight. So
yeah, so we're sort of in a rock and hard place in floodplain management in Heritage Reach. And so thank you for the opportunity to follow Chairman Nunez. I think it sets the stage for this discussion. Claire in a little bit is going to talk about the Living River, I hope, but I'm going to return to one of the presentations early in your series by Bob Webb. You know, you can't see this, but he wrote a book called Requiem for the Santa Cruz, and he talked about the loss of the great mesquite forest, and the wildlife was there. There's some great photos in it. But one of the things that he did in his lecture was he talked about sort of the race to the lowest common denominator in floodplain management in the Heritage Reach. So first came the water. So one of the points he made was that there wasn't water available all up and down the Santa Cruz, only at specific places. And one was at the base of a mountain. So then came the people. And of course, we all know that we want to be near the water. My own house was in the floodplain. I've had structural measures used to take out next to the Rio Chico. And I can tell you it's nice living in the floodplain as long as you don't get flooded. And then came the people's buildings and the need that the people had to modify the flows in the river. And then came a flood of water. And the people said, protect us from this water. So he detailed over 130 years how the heritage reach was managed essentially for two reasons. One, to allow people to get near the Santa Cruz River, and two, to be protected from the floods in the river. So bank protected, encroached, and very little vegetation allowed to grow. So he talked about some ways that we might consider floodplain management in the Heritage Reach, and I'm going to return to that. But first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Flood Control District. So the Flood Control District maintains all the major water courses in Pima County, manages many of them. Much of the land owned by the district was acquired through the floodplain land acquisition program. So the single most important thought in floodplains is get the structures and the people out of them. We've acquired a lot of land through open space management and land swaps. The Riparian Ordinance in Pima County resides in the floodplain ordinance. So there are riparian maps of all of Pima County. And so this provides extra protection for the places that the water flows and the plants grow. So the district and Pima County have a brand new floodplain management plan passed by the Board of Supervisors in the spring of 2020 that looks at every watershed in Pima County and talks about actions that can and should be taken. So I think there's a link in the chat to that. So, and of course, the district tries to make water courses amenities for the community. So there's 130 miles of loop trail, most of it on Pima County flood control owned land. Pima County also is involved in the management of the Cienega Preserve. So some water courses are managed strictly for wildlife. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my role in the Santa Cruz River Management Plan. So the link in the chat talks about the whole river from Santa Cruz County to Pinal County. But I have been active in development of potential improvements in the Grant to Pinal County line. So this is the most effluent dependent reach in the Santa Cruz River. We, in developing alternatives for it, we worked with subgroups, sub-reaches, and stakeholder-specific interests. So there should be a link in the chat to both the management plan link and an online survey that's going on right now in cooperation with Sonoran Institute to talk about some specific improvements. So it'd be great if you could take that. So I want to talk about the part of the river that we're looking at in terms of improvements. And first of all, I want to talk about north of the Agua Nueva treatment plant. So going back to Bob Webb's description of floodplain management and the race to the lowest common denominator, is there water? Indeed, there is water. This is the only traditional navigable waters in the Tucson area. Begins at the Agua Nueva, formerly Roger Road plant, and extends to Pinal County line. So the traditional navigable water allows the greatest protections in this area from the Clean Water Act. So there is indeed water. So then the question is, then came the people. Well, did the people come to live in this reach of the Santa Cruz? And what I'd say is not in modern times. And, Chairman Nunez's ancestors did live in this reach. The 3,000-year-old footprints were found in this reach of the Santa Cruz from the Agua Nueva plant to Ina Road. So there is a good reason people didn't live next to this part of the river, and that's because it was really smelly before 2014. The water was ugly. The defining characteristic of that part of the river was something called schmutzdecke. When Claire and her team did the first fish surveys in the Santa Cruz for the Living River Project, we didn't find fish. And the most common insect in that part of the river was something called a blood midge or a bloodworm. So this was highly blighted. There was a lot of illegal dumping. And I think in some ways that has been sort of the secret weapon of this part of the river, in that when we did improve the water, so first comes the water, in the largest public works project in Pima County history, they improved the water quality on the two treatment plants and began that discharge into the Santa Cruz River in 2014. Certainly the heritage benefits from this as well, but there were dramatic and rapid impacts. So we've seen increasing infiltration. So the infiltration rates in the base of the flow of the river nearly doubled following treatment plant upgrades. The aquatic habitat has dramatically improved. So, because there was no development on the west side of the river is not constrained. There are mature strands of willow. So I really have great hopes for this part of the river, and there are opportunities to improve the habitat in this river. This part of the river, this is the part of the river that the top minnow returned to after 70 years. So I'm really excited about the opportunities in the Corazon Reach, the Three Rivers Reach, the areas north of the Agua Nueva treatment plant to Ina Road. I have to give credit to the leadership of the time in Pima County that recognized that paying for this huge treatment plant upgrade and asking the ratepayers to approve it was a really big ask. So I think we've benefited from that. I think Heritage has benefited from that. So then I want to talk about the reach from Cortero to Avra Valley Road. So this is highly bank protected as well. So Bob showed this and he said, well, maybe this is a vision of the way we ought to be doing floodplain management when we want bank protection. So it's up to 2,000 feet wide in the area north of Cortero, as opposed to Heritage Reach, which is 200 feet wide. It's highly managed, but the people tend to like it. So even though we see an opportunity for improving wildlife connectivity, improving some of the river dynamics and habitat down in the effluent flow channel, it's generally well liked. So then I want to talk about the third reach, was north of Avra Valley Road. So this is the least structurally modified. This is probably contains the best type section of habitat on the Santa Cruz River. And it's the most blank slate of any of these three reaches. So now returning to Heritage, because I know that's why you're here today. So what Bob said about Heritage was that it was highly managed, and because it was encroached and because it was always managed for flood control, the planting of vegetation is probably not a good idea. And so he laid out his concerns, particularly with climate change. And I have to tell you that I'm really quite concerned about the future tropical storms. We've seen what the tropical storms have done in the Atlantic this year. Tropical storms in the Pacific are the ones that tend to make the really big floods on the Santa Cruz. So flood of record occurred in October. So this is not when we normally think of the rainy season, but these tropical storms are, I think the risk is real. So what I'd say about what Bob described is that You know, we, working with Tucson Water, have a vision that this part of the river can appear more like a meadow, you know, without tall, mature trees. This is the most constrained part of the river. And you know, you can tell from the interest that people really like that. And I have to say that it's created a lot of ecosystem function and a lot of benefits. I know that, you know, working with Claire and Michael Bogan on Dragonfly and Dragonfly Day, Michael's very excited about the dragonflies in this reach, very excited about the cattails and the toads. So I think the Heritage Reach, you know, even though I think it has to remain a highly managed reach, can bring a lot of ecosystem services. You know, Bob also described how if we wanted to keep the vegetation there, we would have to break back the banks or put a secondary high bank next to the river. So, you know, I want people to realize that the flexibility in management in the heritage is not the same degree of latitude that we would have, say, north of the Agua Nueva plant, but clearly a lot of benefit for it in the community. So thank you, Ben, and with that, I'll clear out.
Awesome, Evan. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate the perspective you gave there of kind of thinking about the different constraints that the different segments of river have, just, you know, as it flows kind of through the metro area of Tucson. And we'll circle back to some of those topics as we get into the moderated panel part. So thanks a lot. Claire Zugmeyer. Claire, I'll invite you to turn on your camera and join us. Claire is the lead ecologist and project manager for the Santa Cruz River projects with the Sonoran Institute, which she joined in 2007. She leads a variety of efforts, including production of the Living River series that summarizes river conditions, monitoring fish, and other parameters along the river, and organization of the annual Santa Cruz River Research Days, an event promoting collaboration and awareness of regional research and conservation efforts. She completed a Master's of Science in Wildlife and Fisheries Biology at the University of Arizona and a Bachelor of Sciences at UCLA, but we won't hold that against her. You may have seen Claire in, she's been an amazing spokeswoman for the river on a whole bunch of printed magazines, on TV, and she's just been such a wonderful advocate and leading the future of a vibrant river. So Claire, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for helping us put together this evening's panel in general.
Thank you, Ben. Gosh, I feel like Michael Bogan felt last night a little bit embarrassed about your intro, your very generous intro. It's really, really a pleasure to be here and to join Chairman Nunez and Evan to talk about the future of the river. We've seen so much great change, from improved water quality to new flowing reaches, and it'll be exciting to think about what's coming next. So for those of you that may not know Sonoran Institute, we are a conservation nonprofit organization, and we're headquartered here in Tucson, and we were founded in 1990. So we've been working in the watershed and along the Santa Cruz River for a long time now. We've done a lot of diverse things, but they're grounded in our mission to connect people to the natural resources that sustain us. And ultimately, we're looking to create vibrant and resilient communities where people and nature can coexist in harmony. And I'm a little distracted right now because my husband and daughter are listening in the other room and I'm hearing myself. So hopefully you guys are not hearing that. Maybe they can turn down the volume a little bit.
And we're no feedback on our end, so don't worry.
Good, okay. I was hoping this microphone was doing its good work that I thought it would be, but so at the start, Sonoran Institute worked to protect really important areas in the watershed, like the San Rafael Valley, which is the river's headwaters before the river flows into Mexico. And then areas like Las Ciénegas National Conservation Area, and we worked a lot in Ciénega Creek, helping form the Ciénega Watershed Partnership. From there, we worked in Mexico in the town, or with the community in San Lázaro, working with the local ranchers there to improve watershed conditions for both the river and for their cattle operations. And we also worked with the community here to do a variety of other outreach efforts, including creation of a youth birding group that I believe even had some environmental education exchanges with youth groups on the US side, which was before my time. And for the last decade and a half, we've been really focused on the river between Mexico and Marana, and looking at these stretches that still flow thanks to the release of highly treated wastewater, effluent, or recycled water. And we've been promoting the benefits of this use with our flagship report, the Living River series that Evan mentioned. And we've been using these reports to demonstrate the incredible benefits to this practice of releasing this water into the river. We are recharging our aquifers, we are sustaining our river heritage, and creating habitat and enhancing conditions along this really important cultural corridor for this region. And I just lost my train of thought a little bit because the text just came in. The challenges of having all these things connected. I'm sorry about that. These reports, as Ben mentioned, I joined Sonoran Institute in 2007, and it's really this last decade and a half or so that I've been focused on and getting to work on at Sonoran Institute, and I've had the privilege really of getting to lead a lot of our Santa Cruz work and the production of this annual report series that has tracked and communicated so much change along the river. I really feel so lucky to have been witness to so much positive change along the river. And a quick, easy example that I'm often citing for people is what Evan mentioned, and this is the change in the fish diversity along the river. My first fish survey was in 2008 down in the Nogales Reach. This was the first official fish survey to collect data that would go into the annual Living River report. And we literally found 2 individual fish. And granted, they were longfin dace, which is a native fish, so that was exciting. But still, 2 individual fish, there wasn't very many considering we surveyed 5 different locations along the river. And in 2009 is when the Nogales International Wastewater Treatment Plant was upgraded. And so the quality of the water going into the river changed dramatically. And very quickly, the longfin dace increased in number, and we saw an increase in fish diversity as well. And as Evan mentioned, we saw this same pattern along the river in northwest Tucson to Marana, downstream of the 2 major regional facilities. And most importantly was the return of the Gila top minnow. It returned to the river. This little endangered fish returned to the river in 2015 near Nogales, and then in 2017 to the river in northwest Tucson. And just last month, Game and Fish released the top minnow into the Heritage Project in the river downtown. So this is really exciting for an endangered species, a species that used to be widespread throughout the Gila River Basin and is now that's not the case anymore. It's really limited in where it's found. And being able to track, help monitor these populations, be present for the rediscovery of the top minnow, and then help collect them and bring them to the Heritage Project was really incredible. And they're definitely career moments that I'm going to remember for a long time. And there are other things that we've noted, and I highly recommend reading the Living River reports for both series. We started the series in 2008 in Nogales area, and then expanded to the river in the Northwest Tucson to Marana Reach in partnership with Pima County and the Regional Flood Control District in 2012. So we have a lot of reports for anyone that wants to catch up on all these positive changes. But there's been other positive things that I've seen as well. Just last year, after a lot of hard work on many different people and organizations, this area finally is designated as the Santa Cruz Valley National Heritage Area. And that's a great recognition of our incredible cultural and natural heritage that's here thanks to the river. For Sonoran Institute, we have seen change just in some of our own programming. The annual Santa Cruz River Research Days started out as a single day focused on a 1 mile stretch of the river located within the Tumacacori National Historical Park. And we're only talking about natural resources and the research being done within the park. And over the years, it expanded to a 2-day event covering both cultural and natural resources and looking at the river from Mexico all the way to Marana. So really expanded. And I've heard so many times people saying how important this event has been for connecting, learning from each other, and increasing collaborations that they wouldn't have known to talk to so-and-so if they hadn't been there. And so that's been a really nice thing to see happen and to unify communities and people working along the river. And one of the newest collaborations that we've been part of that I think is really exciting for the future of the river and the watershed is the Santa Cruz River Watershed Collaborative, which is focused on the Tucson part, the greater Tucson part of the watershed. And Sonoran Institute and many organizations have been working on this for the last 3 years. And what the collaborative is organizations and agencies and people working together to create a healthy urban watershed with flowing rivers and streams. And that's our goal and what we're striving to do with this collaboration. And so we have biannual forums and many discussions over every month in various meetings and discussing all the different opportunities there are for improving conditions throughout the watershed in addition to the river itself. So I think with all this change that I've been seeing in terms of the actual conditions of the river and just trends of the river overall, I'm really optimistic in the future of the river. And I'm excited to follow the trajectory of the Heritage Project and see where this, experimental river is going to go. And I don't think in terms of the future of the river and restoration, Michael Bogan touched on this a little bit last night. I don't know if restoration is quite the right word, though many of us tend to use it. I think we're not trying to restore the river to some past condition, and the river has changed in many ways over the course of years. So how would we choose which time period to restore it to anyway? And instead, I think what we're trying to do is to improve our stewardship of the river and improve our connections to the river and really look for ways that we can enhance conditions and just have a more vibrant river. And the beauty is that we have a lot of different options because every reach offers different opportunities of things that can be done. So in the downtown reach, even though it's constrained and we're maybe limited in what we can have in the downtown reach, it's this incredibly visible part of the river, and it's a perfect entry point for people to get engaged and see the river and get excited and want to learn more and explore other parts. And so that's one reason Sonoran Institute has been super supportive of Tucson Water's efforts to get this project going, because we knew it was going to generate a lot of community interest in the river. And for other parts of the river, you know, upstream in the San Javier district or downstream in the reaches that Evan was mentioning, we have a lot more room there to allow vegetation to grow, to have trees and, you know, some ribbon of green forests, and you can probably allow a little more natural function of the river and more diverse habitat. But yeah, I'm really excited to join conversations and help facilitate conversations about the future of the river, and I'm optimistic that we will find a good path forward, and now's the time to get the community thinking about what it is we want to see. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Claire. I really like how you describe I kind of refer to as rear view mirror restoration, in the sense that you oftentimes we have this instinct to kind of try to get to what was, and with climate change and so many other scenarios, it's just we shouldn't necessarily just be looking back. We need to be informed by that, but it's really about looking forward, as you described. So that I think that's really important. At this point, I would like to invite Chairman Nunez and Evan Canfield back on. You please, guys, turn on your videos, and then and can unmute yourself. And then and so we'll. I want to start kind of this next period, this next portion of the conversation, by continuing to look forward here. So the heritage reach that we see today is quite different than the heritage reach we're going to see in 20 to 30 years, I imagine. And connected that's about the next time, as I understand, that clearing for flood control may be needed, right? So there's going to be, I'm just very interested in kind of what that narrative is going to be like. What's that discourse going to be like? So how do you see the community of Tucson's relationship with the river changing over that time? And I can start with anyone who wants to pick that up, but Evan, go for it.
I mean, I think what I would like you, and I think Bob would agree, we're really not looking, we're looking to maintain it as a grass waterway. I think, the sediment, and that is the future of that part of the river. The constraints are for flow are just, not going to be 30 years before we remove trees again. It'll be maintained at the, to be that grassed meadow. That's the vision for downtown. I know, I'm sure that Maya would agree as well. So
let me ask you a follow-up just to that piece, thinking about the grass meadow. This came up last night as well, talking about and it connects to just what you were describing, Claire, in terms of the management of that space. What do your plans think in terms of maintaining the grass meadow for really not allowing invasive grasses to take that over?
yeah, it's a great thought. I mean, invasive species are a significant concern. I know that, in the at one time we were talking about a IGA with the city of how would they maintain it to prevent them. So your side of it, dear city of Tucson, the invasive species introduce the water, your problem. So I don't know if that's the way it pans out. I think we certainly have to keep our eye on them. So
we know
that made you feel good. You didn't like that answer.
I didn't like that one. We did not follow board.
But it's yeah, certainly the buffalo grass, the Johnson grass, the certainly, hopefully not bullfrogs. That's another one that we
totally. So, Chairman Nunez, how do you see the community, both your district's kind of relationship to the river evolving over time, and then also in relation to the larger metro region?
Well, for the current area, what I failed to mention earlier was that because of all the water that has been being used in the community in the last few years since the CAP water was introduced to us, it's infiltrated into the groundwater, the aquifer here, and then also with the recharge from the city northeast of us. it's brought the groundwater table up. So there is a reach on the south side of, south side of Martinez Hill, where part of the river has begun to flow. So initially, we did not, as a community, want anyone to know. We wanted to safeguard it. However, we began to think further about the fact that, it is, we celebrated that, just the return of the flow in our community. And so we began to think about, well, okay, so how do we interface with the surrounding communities about this? There was a thought that, well, why don't we go ahead and slowly introduce or let them know. The reason that part of our community didn't want anyone to know is because of trespassing. Trespassing has always been a problem with our community, and it was much worse years ago, and it's improved quite a bit. So we want to collaborate, and I know we resisted a request from either the county, I believe it was the county, about having the trails expanded, the bike trail, pedestrian trail along the river into our community so that people could have access to the Santa Cruz Mission Church. Personally, I like the idea. However, the general census of our community is that not just yet. We still want to safeguard our community. And so we need to continue to look at ways of allowing others to come and visit, but pay respect to the land and to our community. So with that small stretch of the river that began to flow, we've at this point had 2 days of cleaning it up to pull the tamarisk and then some of the buffalo grass. And these were small groups of 10, and we certainly involved the youth. So we are beginning to re-educate ourselves about, maintaining the river with water in it, and then to look at ways to enhance, as was mentioned earlier by Claire, the river there. And certainly, perhaps there could be a way of reintroducing CAP water, or introducing CAP water into the river flow just by letting it just flow in there, like we did with the Arroyos project. That was a 12-year project that in the end we were able to realize that with that amount of flow that was going in there, that 1,000 acre-feet of water could be recharged just using a natural stream bed. So, but again, even with that, there's a lot of planning that needs to go into that. So I'm hopeful that the future generations will be able to expand their awareness of how to maintain the river, and we hope that the stretch gets longer and wider. So that's my response.
Thank you. Yeah. Claire, kind of similar question, but what can be done to facilitate, people's, our collective community's relationship with the river, but also, as you all have discussed, kind of managing expectations at the same time?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think for starters is just getting more people aware of the different reaches of the river. So when I'm talking about the results of the Living River reports and trying to be very clear which reach of the river we're talking about and how downtown we're seeing changes, and then north of, in the northwest town, northwest of Tucson to Marana, we're seeing changes. So I think trying to be very clear of where we're seeing things will be good, so people start to realize which part of the river. Sorry, I just was trying to think. You were wanting to how to manage expectations. I think we just need to keep messaging that, the heritage reach is an experiment and it's managed part of the river. I mean, really the whole river has many managed aspects to it, right? And so it's making sure that people are aware that there are places where we can let nature do more of its thing, and that in the downtown reach, unfortunately, unless we do some really drastic changes in the downtown reach, we're probably going to need to do a little more management, but that doesn't mean we can't get benefits from this area. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, well, I was going to say that my daughter gets excited seeing the river flowing downtown, and I probably instill that excitement because every time I'm going over the river, I say, oh, look, there's water, there's water. And I think that alone is an important benefit, because people connecting with water in the river, not just because it's flowing, raining, is really important to connect to our heritage. And so that's why I think the Heritage Project plays such a critical role in just connecting people to the river that don't have this same long historical connection like the chairman and the community do. For those of us like myself who have been living here since 2003, I didn't realize the river used to flow year round until I think it was before I joined Sonoran Institute, but then I really learned a lot more about the river after I joined Sonoran Institute, and it's really provided a really good sense of place and added a lot to my life. So trying to share as much of that as possible.
You made me think of a couple of things there. One, just that everything you're describing with that generational, and the chairman, you mentioned that too, that generational appreciation and passing down, and how, I think in fairly short order, there can be a whole really paradigm change of appreciation and new level of connection to the river. And the second piece was that thinking about the work that your colleague Francisco Zamora and many partners in Mexico and throughout the U.S. Did in the Colorado River and the pulse flows, and just that excitement that when people saw those communities saw water back in the river, it was the same scene as we had here on San Juan's Day.
Yeah.
And it's pretty awesome.
No, I definitely felt that. I remember riding my bike to the release event and then seeing the river coming and thinking, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And then the whole time I thought, oh my gosh, this is our mini pulse flow, except it's not a pulse flow. It's going to be here. And even though it was a totally different scale of water, the excitement was the same, and it was very real and exciting to see.
I think there's a PhD project waiting to be done out there in terms of just what happens when you turn the water back on in the desert. Socially. So kind of next question here, thinking about the long-term nature of this project, which is one of the elements I think is very exciting about it. And what kind of continuity and leadership, community organizations and approach will be required to support the kind of the quote unquote restoration, as we've been defining here, of Tucson's rivers, including the Santa Cruz, the Heritage Reach, and thinking about this over the next several decades. And I'm really curious of each of your perspectives on that, because you each have different pieces of that stakeholder level. Chairman, if you would like to start.
Sure. We are very grateful to the Sonoran Institute for allowing us to present at their annual conferences. And we just, for ourselves, we just need to continue doing that, being able to inform people about our history and our relationship to the water that used to flow, and then being able to work with other organizations to continually carry that message forward, that water is very sacred. Water is vital to our survival here in the desert, and to continue to also send the message that we need to save this water for the future generations. And for us here, we need to continually work on our flood management system, which is very minimal. And we know that if we build gabions upstream and build them all the way, that'll slow the flow, and of course the rainwater will penetrate back into the aquifer, and then the wildlife and plant life should begin to thrive. But again, that's looking at steady rainfall. And as was mentioned earlier, climate change is unpredictable. I mean, we need to put that factor into our future planning as a community. So we unfortunately don't have the wherewithal financially to be able to develop projects to work towards our vision of making sure that our community continues to be able to host our lives as well as the plant life, the animal life. And when we do that, then we would be able to hope that the neighboring communities would do likewise. And so we're just, at least for the time that I'm here, I'm open to working with others to be able to collaborate and to be able to get our own community back into the mode of really opening up and allowing others to come and be a part of our community as well.
Right. Well, in terms of continuity of leadership, we can just have you do several more terms too.
Creator willing, and if my people are willing to allow me to serve, I will certainly continue. Thank you.
Evan or Clara, do you want to add?
Yeah, so, I think the challenge is always the water and the water scarcity and the demand for water. So, one of the things that the city and the county have agreed on is the need for water for habitat. So, we've tried to commit water to the Santa Cruz. There's a lot of water in the Santa Cruz. So the effluent in the Santa Cruz accounts for approximately just under half of the quantity sold by Tucson Water. There are a lot of other providers, but it's a lot of water. And so, there's also a demand for the water. So we're fortunate right now that much of the river north of the treatment plants is flowing because essentially the city's taken off some of the Sweetwater wetlands recharge projects or Sweetwater recharge projects, but in the not too distant future, there will be more recharge projects going on further east. So, the challenge is always the water and the ability of our community to commit some of it for the environment. And, we're active in that. We try to commit. Won't say more, but yeah, we got some good stuff going and commitment of the water to the river.
I feel like I just want to echo both Evan and the chairman in that water availability is definitely going to be a challenge. In the future, we could see a lot of rain coming at once and really big storms, or very little rain like our monsoon this summer. But I think we have a lot of good opportunities to figure out how we want to use our water and to best coordinate and collaborate and work as a region instead of individually different organizations. So either through research days where we're sharing research and coordinating efforts, or through the collaborative where different agencies are coming together just to learn from each other and realize, oh, you're working on that project. Oh yeah, well, we're working not too far away. So let's, dovetail efforts and try to get more bang for the buck, to add another expression. So I think, no one entity can ever do it all, and it will really take everyone working together. And I think there's a lot of neat ways that we've seen an increase in collaboration. I feel like we've seen an increase in collaboration and coordination along the river in the last decade, and there's definitely more that can be done and improve, especially with the collaborative. I think if we're successful at working together and coordinate improving conditions in the watershed, that will only benefit the river and maybe allow more things to happen.
Well, let me follow up just on that. So thinking about the collaborative that, you all are part of, watershed management helps facilitate and is a key part of as well, that, really well described the distinct nature of these different reaches of the river. Can you maybe talk a little bit about and describe the different goals you each have for the different parts of the river, and then how that kind of pieces together as kind of a collective management plan? And I know the collaborative has talked a lot along those lines. I'm just curious, maybe hearing just a little bit more about the kind of the micro, but then the macro as well. Yeah, Claire, go.
Yeah, I can start. Well, so the Santa Cruz Watershed Collaborative is really focused on the greater Tucson area. So from about Santa Cruz County line or Elephant Head Road north to the Pinal County line. And Sonoran Institute's looking at the whole river. So for us, we don't have a specific vision, I would say, for each reach right now that's super concrete, but we do want, our vision is that it's a flowing river from Mexico to Marana that continues in some way, flowing at the surface or not far from the surface, that continues to sustain our community's health and prosperity. And so for me, that means that the river in the future is going to be a place that people are going to go to and appreciate and are connected with. And whether it's dry or whether it's wet, it's going to be viewed as the place to go. When people come here, they're going to say, oh yeah, we got to go to the Santa Cruz River. When I first was visiting here before I moved here for grad school, people said, oh, you got to check out Mount Lemon, Catalina Highway, and the Desert Museum. Those were the two big things people told me to do, which I definitely enjoyed. And hopefully we're going to reach a point where it's like, oh yeah, you got to check out these spots along the river and make sure you add those to your list. So I think, as what I was saying before, I think what we have to improve and enhance is going to be different in each reach. And like Paseo de las Iglesias, and Evan can speak more to this, the flood control district did a lot of great work in there, and it's not flowing right now, but it looks a lot better than it did before. And it's highlighting our heritage and some of the natural resources with the signage. And so I think each reach offers a little different flavor.
Evan, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so I'm going to hit on a couple of, we would like the river, I always return to the Corazon Reach, the Three Rivers Reach, because of the blighted part of it, because it had illegal dumping for years, because there are ATV traffic there, and because it was the place where the top mineral returned and the sunset, the footprints were. So my vision for that part of the river is, yes, let's keep the ATVs out. I think there's a lot of commitment as well. We're working with Tucson Clean and Beautiful on cleanups along the river, also with Sonoran Institute. And another initiative we've got going is tracking the trash and doing forensics on the trash. So perhaps we can figure out where the heck it came from and address it more at the source. So I think trash, that has always been a problem in at least the downstream.
Circle K polar cups, we learned last night.
Exactly, the polar cups. There are people who, we were tracking, which stores are they coming from? You can tell by the label, so trash is a big deal. So I think cleaning up. I think access. I think we have to create places, and I'll talk about this once again, the Three Rivers Reach, the Corazon Reach, where people can have access to this great habitat. As it is, they're not really good places to visit the river. The loop, Claire and I were actually lucky enough to walk next to Sunset Road when we laid out the loop. The guy who was laying it out said, we're going to do this, we're going to put it here. And, and then all of a sudden, this place that had been this illegal dumping and this, nasty hill slope became, Sunset Road and the loop path and the big trees. So I think I really want to increase access and awareness clean up the trash. The invasive species, we've got a grant working with Audubon on tamarisk removal in a place we'd like to do a restoration project. So I think all of those are challenges. And I really do believe that that this, you know, it's all about the water. First comes the water, and the water now is good, and it hadn't been for a very long time. So I think I'm really think our opportunities are great. So,
Chairman, would you like to add anything to that question?
Sure. You know, I mentioned our riparian restoration site that we currently have. Our community really enjoys that. They go out there to have parties and events, and you know, it's great to see that. And every 4 years, we as a community as a whole go and offer more prayers so that the water can continue to flow to us. So we are continually looking for grants to help us expand restoring the riverbed area where we can. And then the other thing is that we are planning to expand the current 1,000 acres of farmlands further south, about another 1,000 acres. So part of that plan is to then stabilize the bank on the west side of the river in that area. And it has been stabilized in the area of Martinez Hill. And it's worked fine, it's worked great. And so we will continue to look for grants as well to stabilize more of the Santa Cruz further south as best as we can. The expansion of the farm is part of the Southern Arizona Water Rights Settlement Act. So the federal government will be able to provide the funding for that. Then the maintenance of it falls back on us as the community and the cooperative farm. So even with the usage of the water, with the expansion of the farm, all of that will infiltrate back into the aquifer and be able to again raise the aquifer, and maybe the flow will then increase further south. So that's what I'd like to say about that.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna have a question for you, Chairman, from Brenda Neufeld, who says I wonder, when you were growing up, Chairman, did the elders reminisce about different types of wildlife they'd seen in and near the Santa Cruz on the WAC district in their younger days?
Yes, actually, they did. And one of them is the turkey that I mentioned earlier. And just, of course, the deer. I don't think that these elders had the luxury of seeing the pronghorn antelope that was abundant years prior. So it was primarily just the bird life, and then the small, the javelinas and the rabbits and all of those smaller wildlife that had been in the area. And you know, I think that I don't recall them mentioning anything about the fish, but I'm sure that the fish were there when the stream was flowing. So that's what I recall them saying about that.
And another question for you, Chairman, and I'm going to add on to what Axel asked here. So Axel says, would a gallery forest restoration effort along the San Javier section help protect the area downtown? And the piece I want to add on to that is, in this series, we've learned a lot about the Great Mesquite Bosque that was also in the WAC district. And I'm curious, is there thinking about kind of the forest, the gallery forest of both riparian trees, but also in terms of the Mesquite Bosque, that's part of the plans connected to the expansion of the farmland as well, or what your thoughts are on that?
Well, yes, actually it is. And currently that is also the plan for the current farm area, to plant mesquite trees in the roadways and the berms. So that's the same thought for the expansion. And then of course, if we're able to do another riparian restoration project, mesquite would certainly be part of that mix, along with cottonwood and the other trees.
Great. So I'm going to start to kind of hop around between you all with some specific questions from the audience. This is from Rob Simpson for you, Evan. Do you have past and present flood frequency data? And then what can you tell us about future flood frequency data, which you alluded to earlier?
Yeah, that's a great question and a hard one to answer. And Bob talked about this a little bit. Because tropical storms on the, we certainly have lots of data. The Santa Cruz at Congress Street, USGS goes back like to 1900, very long time. So we know we have really good data. What we have learned is that at least from a flooding perspective, it really matters whether it's a tropical storm or which cause the big storms, and they don't happen every year. So the way that we've actually done the estimate of the biggest storm, Bob said we just took the biggest storm, the 1983 storm, and made that the 100-year event. It was a little more complicated than that. Essentially they looked at, and he knows that we looked at the ones caused by tropical storms. So yeah, I think the concerns about tropical storms going forward, I think we're likely to see more of them. And, because just the dynamics of a warmer ocean, more moisture in the atmosphere, I think will drive more tropical storms. Of course, the people who have done future climate say it's difficult for them to see downscaling of tropical storms, so they can downscale monsoon storms and the winter storms. So I don't know if that answered Rob's question, but there's certainly a lot of data and a lot of concern and awareness of a paired effort by the Bureau of Reclamation is this Santa Cruz Basin study, which did do future projections out about 50 years based on climate scenarios. So
I'll just add that, that's an area of research actively at the University of Arizona by many people, especially kind of trying to understand and predict the behavior of the monsoons going forward, but then also, of course, the tropical storms. So that kind of large scale climatic modeling fits very locally as well. So this next question is from Catlo Shipik, and he says that, quote, "I'm curious to hear more from Evan and Claire about the possibility of restoring riparian habitat and surface flows with CAP or treated effluent recharge in the Paseo de las Iglesias reach, essentially north of San Javier District to the Santa Cruz Heritage Project." Sub question, is there sufficient floodplain capacity? And then he says that it would be great to see surface flow connection downstream of the WAC district to the Santa Cruz Heritage Reach Project.
I feel like that's definitely an Evan question. I'll just say that Sonoran's too would definitely be supportive of any increases in reaches with water. Particularly what some of us call the middle stretch, between Tucson and Santa Cruz County, with the new stretch flowing in the San Javier Reach. That's super exciting since it's the one natural flowing reach that we have in the US right now, or at least once it returns from Mexico. So I think any opportunities to increase flows, if flood capacity allows, it would be really exciting. I've heard Tucson Water mention some ideas, but I don't think there's anything officially determined yet.
yeah, so to put some context in this, so the Paseo de las Iglesias was a large Corps of Engineer funded major channel realignment. And so yes, there's much more capacity for overbank flows in that area. And it was designed with the thought of a terrace. So one of the things that Bob was talking about was the importance of floodplain terraces, so that even in the smaller flows, the water gets out of bank and waters the trees. So, I think it's a great reach for considering that. I mean, the issue is the infrastructure and the water, probably more so than the floodplain. I mean, there will still be some need to consider how big can the trees get. But certainly there was it's a much less constrained scenario than the Heritage Reach. And there was a lot of thought about the overbank and the restoration potential there, yes.
Another question for you, Evan. This is from Doug Duncan. Yeah, if land ownership and funding was not an issue, would Pima Flood Control consider removing some existing soil cement and then rebuilding it further away from the active channel?
Ooh, so yeah, he's asking me the county administrator's question. So you know, in an ideal sense, I mean, I have to agree that that would be great. I mean, I think that's the what Bob described was this race to the least common denominator of floodplain management in the Heritage Reach. So yeah, sure. You know, if we could give up the Waffle House and the 2 Circle Ks, and you know, perhaps there's a place for that. And the Caterpillar facility, they might not be so excited about that thought, but you know, they're actually pretty good partners. They've done trash cleanups, so
We can't let them get up that easy. Let me ask, I want each of you to weigh in on this final question, which is a little bit of softball, but at the same time, I think really important. So, which is, you know, what can people watching this or communicate to others do to participate in the rebirth of the Santa Cruz River? And so I'll, well, Claire, let me start with you.
Sure. Well, I always tell people to get out and visit the river and explore all the different parts. So do that and then tell people, hey, I went to the river and I saw this cool thing and did that. Just help spread the word is really important. And then other ways that Evan mentioned that Sonoran Institute has been trying to get started this year, though we picked a bummer year to try to start, trying to start trash cleanups because trash has been noted by, I think, all communities up and down the river as being a problem. And it was identified as a need for research in the research agenda that came out of the 2018 research days. And so this year we decided to partner with Pima County and Flood Control District and Tucson Clean and Beautiful to see if we could start doing some trash cleanups and at the same time collect some data. So figuring out what kind of trash is there. And our first cleanup was going to be, I think in April, which of course was a really poor timing, but we decided not to lose our momentum, and we launched the Not in My River campaign and tried to encourage people to pick up trash wherever they were and to challenge their friends and other people to pick up trash. Because really wherever you are in the watershed, you know, trash can end up in any of the washes and then ultimately down to the river. So yeah, that's one way people can contribute wherever they are. They don't have to go down to the river to pick up trash.
Great. Evan?
oh, she got the best one. That was mine. Good job, Claire, though. So the first thing, take the Santa Cruz River survey that we've got up online. You know, I said to plug that. Have your children participate in the Living River of Words, which is still going on despite the pandemic, where their children learn about the Santa Cruz River and do artwork. We have it on the Living River reports, so this is really excited about that. You know, we're always looking for more and better. So the Dragonfly Day was a thing we could add. You know, I've been trying to get Tucson Master Naturalists to work with us in say vegetation transect surveys for high schoolers. We've done one of those in the Heritage Reach. We'd like to expand that reach wide, so more educational opportunities. So yeah, I think the biggie that we've got going for the public is the trash cleanups, but also the improvement survey.
Thanks. And Chairman?
I certainly echo both what Claire and Evan had to mention. And then perhaps at some point when we have future cleanups for our small segment of the river, perhaps we could invite people from outside of the community to join in on that. And that'll probably would be within maybe the next couple of years, and certainly after the pandemic is over.
And just
thank you.
I apologize. I was going to add one more thing. Tucson Brush and Bulky is now beginning to work with us on this trash cleanup. So if there's trash cleanup up in certain places, they will come out on the following week and pick up trash. So, I mean, that's just happening just in the last few days that we've arranged that. So really excited about those partnerships. And perhaps extend to the San Javier district as well.
I would mention one thing in addition that we discussed last night too, which is on kind of the biological side of making observations, you know, contributing to the science that's happening there using the iNaturalist platform and eBird. And so that's such a great thing to do now, especially to supplement your, you know, with your kids or have school groups go out or just anyone who's interested. I mean, that data is really useful along the whole stretch. And so that's a great way to participate as well. Well, I think that we have to, you know, bring the thing to a wrap, unfortunately. It's been such a wonderful series. Thank you, each of you, so much for not just participating tonight, but your efforts and your leadership and collaboration on all of this. So thank you. I also want to take a moment and to reveal the magician behind the curtain. So this whole series is being going so smoothly due to the work of Ana Seiferle Valencia, the program manager here of the Desert Laboratory. Then in the background for every piece of it, but from the scheduling to the setting up the webinar, I mean, just every piece of it, Ana's made this happen. So thank you very much for all your efforts for that. To all of you, thank you so much for joining us, for participating in this series. This is the end of the Santa Cruz lecture series. We have one more event here at the Desert Laboratory for this season. Next Wednesday, December 9th, we have the book launch for new book, Nature of Desert Nature, edited by Gary Nabhan. It's going to be a really, really special night. I really encourage you to join. It's going to be some of the best thinkers we have about the desert, having time to reminisce and share their poetry, their words, and their thoughts for the future. And then just as a little teaser, our next lecture series in the spring is going to be focused on agave and is going to be partnering with Hotel Congress and EXO as well. So we're very excited to bring that to you then. For now, please be well, take care of yourselves, take care of your families. We wish you nothing but the best, and really our heart goes out to you, and we hope you are safe in these times. So good night, you all. Thank you so much for participating with us.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks. Thanks, Carmen. Thanks, Claire.
Good to
Thanks,
see you
everybody.
all virtually.
Take care.